A beautiful nurse named Gwen attends to a patient who is struggling to breathe, but instead of helping her, she intentionally turns off her oxygen tank. When the woman stops breathing, Gwen pretends to be in panic and calls for help. They were able to revive the patient, and as one doctor looks at the evil nurse, she just walks out smiling. Meanwhile, a family is living happily with Myra preparing breakfast for her husband Todd and their son Max, who has a disability. However, when Max calls for his caretaker, it turns out to be Gwen, the psycho nurse from earlier, and the boy seems to be so close to her. While they're having breakfast, the husband and the nurse shares their love for sugar, and Myra felt a bit jealous. Later that day, Myra's friend Karen arrives, and they talk about Max's caretaker. Karen doubts Gwen and she suggests to Myra that they try other nurses. Unbeknownst to them, Gwen overhears their conversation. Karen asks where they found the nurse, and Myra says she forgot, and perhaps it was Gwen who found them. Max suddenly screams in pain, and when Myra rushes to him, she scolds Gwen, but Max says it was not the nurse's fault. His crutches broke, which without their knowledge, is Gwen's doing. Myra calls his son's doctor to tell him what happened, and to order new crutches. Later that night, Myra apologizes to Gwen for the earlier incident. Gwen reassures her, saying it's understandable given the stress of being a mother. Gwen makes Myra some calming tea to help her relax. The next day, Myra joins a community for people with muscular dystrophy. She shares Max's story, a recent diagnosis, and how he fell while climbing a slide. The memory of Max's fall brings tears to Myra's eyes, as she's still haunted by the incident. When Myra returns home, Gwen prepares her with more tea. While Myra naps on the sofa, Dr. Keller arrives to provide Max with new crutches. Gwen prevents Dr. Keller from meeting Max, and the doctor mentions they might have met before, though she can't recall where. In the evening, Gwen visits Dr. Keller at her house, saying that she remembers how they met. Upon entering the house, Gwen quickly administers an injection to Dr. Keller. She claims they know each other from the hospital, where they treated a patient who Gwen attempted to harm. Gwen also confesses her intention to eliminate Dr. Keller, whom she views as a nuisance to her and her family. Gwen has injected Dr. Keller with a potent drug and leaves another vial so the police would think she died of overdose. Later that night, Myra receives a call from an unknown person named David, who claims to be a friend from her recently joined community. David tries to bond with Myra by sharing that his son, Carter, also suffers from muscular dystrophy. However, when Myra requests to see the person she's talking to, she only sees a low-resolution photo. David reveals that he's a widow and relies on a nurse to care for Carter. Myra, hearing this, believes her decision to hire a live-in nurse was the right one. Unbeknownst to her, David is, in fact, Gwen, disguising her voice using computer software. In the morning, Karen returns to find Myra's family having breakfast. She accidentally spills a drink on Todd's shirt. Gwen just oddly stares at Todd, who is undressing, and she then takes his clothes to the laundry room. Karen, noticing Myra's unwell state, offers to help her retrieve her bag from the office. While passing the laundry room, Karen catches Gwen smelling Todd's clothes. That night, Gwen, pretending to be David, calls Myra to inquire about her and Max's well-being. Later, Gwen informs Todd that Myra was on the phone with another man, attempting to make him suspicious. She then bids goodnight and hugs Todd. The next morning, Gwen and Todd are in the kitchen while Myra is still asleep. Gwen seems eager to spend time with Todd and attempts to seduce him. However, Myra wakes up, interrupting the moment. Gwen has taken over Myra's role in preparing breakfast, and Todd is concerned about his wife, who frequently naps on the sofa. Karen later calls to thank Myra for the birthday flowers, but Myra doesn't recall sending them. She learns that it was Gwen who sent the flowers because she worried that Myra has forgotten Karen's birthday. Myra suddenly faints, and she expresses that she needs to see a doctor soon. Gwen offers to take Myra's blood for lab testing. Later that night, Myra confides in David about Gwen, who has taken over everything, from the household to taking care of her family. When Todd and Max return, Myra's vision blurs, and she promises to join them later in the room. As she's about to fall asleep on the sofa, Myra receives a message telling her that David is a fraud. The next day, Todd tries to wake Myra on the sofa, and accidentally sees the message on her cell phone. Myra apologizes to Gwen for her earlier negative perception and acknowledges Gwen's hard work in the house. Gwen feels content being treated as a part of the family. Myra receives another message from A.D. Weber, warning the group to stop engaging with David, but she just ignores this. Myra forces herself to go to work, and at the office, she tells Karen that her lab test results are fine, attributing her fatigue to the need for rest. Myra receives an email from David, who is Gwen, warning her about Weber. David tells Myra that her child is in danger, urging her to meet him. Back home, Todd overhears Myra's conversation with Gwen about meeting someone, and he starts suspecting his wife. The next day, Myra goes to the cafe for her meeting with David. She encounters the real David Weber, who denies ever speaking to Myra and reveals someone impersonated him. Myra is in disbelief but doesn't yet suspect Gwen's involvement. Todd, who has been following Myra, witnesses her hugging David, further fueling his suspicions. Meanwhile, Karen visits the house and tells Gwen that she knows her plan, saying that she saw her smelling Todd's shirt. She warns Gwen against messing with the family, and as Karen is about to leave, Gwen attacks her from behind. The nurse takes her to a remote location and injects her with something. She receives a call from Todd, who is crying, telling her that he followed David to a hotel. While Myra is preparing dinner, she receives a message from her husband, stating that he'll be home late. Gwen secretly takes her knife and tells Myra that she'll just meet an old friend. She goes to the hotel where David is staying, and it turns out that Gwen was the nurse of David's wife before she passed away. Gwen reveals that she convinced his wife to stop her cancer treatment, leading to her death. David gets mad, and the nurse stabs him with the knife. She pours some blood in a vial on him and leaves. Later that night, Todd returns home drunk, and Gwen uses this opportunity to get closer to him. She takes Todd to his room and attempts to seduce him, but Todd remains loyal to his wife and tells Gwen to leave his room. The next morning, Myra wakes up and finds a note on her tea which is written by Gwen. She refers to Max as the little guy, and Myra realizes that it is what the imposter David calls his imaginary son. Suspicious, Myra pours the tea on her bottle and finds some powdery residues. She goes to Gwen's room and finds a book about toxins, as well as medicines hidden under her bed. Gwen and Max have returned home, so Myra abruptly leaves Gwen's room. Gwen prepares her another tea, encouraging her to rest. While they are gone, Myra returns to Gwen's room, recording evidence of what Gwen has been doing to her. She then prepares to leave while calling Todd, informing him that she has evidence against Gwen, and she intends to report it to the police. Unexpectedly, Gwen returns home, evidently aware that her actions have been uncovered. Myra asks where Max is, and Gwen says she'll bring her to him. During their journey, Gwen reveals that she resorted to these actions because she never felt like part of the family she cared for. All she wanted was a happy family like Myra's, which she believed could only be attained by removing her from the picture. Meanwhile, Todd returns home and searches for Myra, finding only her cell phone. He checks the recorded video as evidence. Upon reaching a house, Gwen admits to killing individuals who posed a threat to her family, including Dr. Keller, Karen, and David. Myra discovers this revelation and frantically seeks Max, only to realize Gwen's deception. Gwen discloses that the knife used to kill David bears Myra's fingerprints since Myra was the last person to use it. The blood she poured on David's body was also from Myra, further adding to her incrimination. Myra attempts to flee, but Gwen manages to catch her. They end up in a struggle, during which Myra successfully incapacitates Gwen by striking her with a teapot, and she hastily escapes from the house to her car. Days later, we can see that the family is happily reunited, and that's it, a hanging conclusion with no more words about what happened to Gwen. Did you like our movie recap? Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. To be updated for new movie recaps, hit the notification bell.